Welcome, everybody, to the Dwelt podcast. I am Mitch Waite. I'm here with Chris Hardman and Dan Jensen. And man, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about this week. We've got war in Israel and Iran yet again. We've got what else? We've got 911 going down. We've got Chinese attack against the U.S. that's been forecasted by the FBI. We've got scripture prophecy being fulfilled. We've got power going out. I mean, it doesn't end. Earthquakes in diverse places, wars and rumors of wars. It's crazy. So we're excited to have you here today. We're going to get into answering some questions that we have from different people on Twitter, on X. And we've got a number of topics to cover that just are current events. We're going to talk about emergency plans. We're going to talk a little bit more about Dwelt and some details about Dwelt. We'll give you a status update there. And yeah, a handful of other things. I'm looking at my hit list, and there's just a ton of stuff here. So, Chris, do you want to kick us off? What's the big topic that we need to talk about this morning?
I want to first start with a quote from Elder Boyd K. Packer, because I was told we are to Doomsday this week.
Okay.
So here's the quote from Elder Packer. "The world is spiraling downward at an ever-quickening pace. I am sorry to tell you that it will not get better." So I don't know what to tell you guys. The funny thing is, I don't feel like Doomsday at all. I feel optimistic and hopeful about the future, and I think you do too, from what we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, we talked last time about how the end of the world is a difficult thing to think about, but if you flip it to what it really means, the end of Babylon. So all of the things that are prophesied in the scriptures having to do with the end of the world actually are talking about the end of Babylon. There's a scripture in Isaiah that says Babylon is fallen, and goes on to talk about what that looks like and what that means. I remember it because the quote is, "Watchman, what of the night? Watchman, what of the night?" It repeats it, and it says, "Babylon is fallen, is fallen." And yeah, I just think I look forward to a time when I can raise my kids where they don't have all of these pressures from media and society to look at weird things like, what gender are you? Or to be focused on, oh, if I'm rich, it'll solve all my problems, or the pressure that they have to be promiscuous, even at a very young age. I mean, there's so much that Babylon represents that I can't wait for that to be gone. So if the Doomsday is mourning Babylon, then yeah, I'm sorry. If you're going to miss your jazz games and your Taylor Swift albums, you're going to be miserable. But if you're looking forward to a time when there's none of that stuff, you're going to be stoked.
Yeah, a lot of people complain about the modern world and how degenerate it is, and how even though like capitalism is the best system we've had,
yeah,
there's still plenty of downfalls, obviously, and you have to go and work on spreadsheets for 40 years of your life, and there's like no meaning, and technology is great too, but there's also plenty of downside in that. And so this is in my mind, a chance to kind of reset all of that and have a great society. We can rebuild a society. I think the problem is whether you even want to get into the religious prophecy side of this or not. It seems that the evil and the corruption is just so entrenched now in every single part of society. Like, it's not just government, it's in everything, that it almost has to collapse in order to rebuild something better. I don't know that you can fix it as it currently is.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll get into that. There's some commentary that we there were some questions on X that we both received that we commented on that we're interested in addressing. We'll get to that here in a minute. I put it this way. As you go on vacation, wherever it is in the world, you go on vacation, you have time away from work, maybe you have time with close family or friends that you go on vacation with. What do you end up doing? You go outside. You know, you go to Hawaii, you sit on the beach, you go to the mountains, you go hiking, you go to the desert, you go hiking, you swim, like you interact with nature. And then and you love it. It's this immersive, satisfying experience. And then you come home and you go sit at your desk in your day job, or you go work in your retail store. You come out of that environment, and what happens? You're freaking miserable. And so as people are like, oh, doomsday, crap, everything's going to collapse. I'm like, yeah. And then you get to be outside full time. Like, it's going to be great. As I went out, I got up this morning and went out, and we're doing irrigation right now on the farm. So I got out, took my shovel, took the pickup truck, drove out into the fields, shoveled a bunch of dirt. The sun is rising, like everything's green, the birds are chirping, and I'm doing manual labor. And there's no external pressure from anybody. Like, nobody, I'm not trying to hit a deadline. I'm out there working. And I'm sitting there going, I can't believe people don't get this in their life. They get up, they run to the gym, they run to their office, they come back home, they turn on the TV, scroll through TikTok. They miss out on this. Like, if that's doomsday, I think you're all living in doomsday. So whoever said we're too doomsday, they should reevaluate the way that they spend their time and look forward to a time when they can spend it differently. Dan, what do you think about all this? You're fairly new to
Shout out to
some
Tanner.
of these
We
things.
love you.
Well, I definitely
We did love Tanner.
have to say something here. So like, as you guys know, like, I mean, we met probably 7-8 months ago, and we've had several conversations about a lot of these topics even before doing this podcast. And so I've had the opportunity to kind of think about it and like try to listen to what you guys have said with your thoughts. And for a little bit, I was feeling a little bit nervous too, and like a little anxious, and a little bit like, wow, there's a lot of doomsday here. What's going on? Because I feel like I've spent a lot of my life trying to be on the positive side of it, trying to filter news and not watch it too much, and just be cautious, right? And my wife kind of struggles with it too, with the anxiety of it. And so I have to be careful what I say to her, because I don't want to trigger her to be all depressed and anxious. And
then we just came in your life and opened the
yeah.
floodgates. We're like, take a look at how bad everything is.
It's true, but here's what I've realized is you do have to be a little careful with who you tell about these types of things, because like my mom, for example, cannot handle it at all, right? It's just not even an option to talk to her about anything that's a little weird or strange or extra or different. And
we love Sister Jensen. We love her and appreciate the son that she raised.
Yes. We do. And what I found is it's her protective instinct for her son, right? And so but she's very much like on a certain view, and so is my dad, and so are my siblings and friends. And so I just feel like you have to be kind of aware of each person's personality and what they feel comfortable talking about. And I don't want to push anything on anybody, but I feel like the conversations we have had have been very uplifting overall, right? So we do talk about some of these things that are a little stressful, and preparedness, and how the world is going to crap. And but what I love is that we always bring it back to what do we need to do though through the process of all this. And I feel like the biggest thing that's helped me in talking with you two is just realizing that it's not like we're going to win, right? Like we prevail if we're on the right side. And we're going to be able to get through this. And it's not that the world itself is going to blow up. Like, I don't know, maybe there's a conspiracy theory about that, but you know, it's like the earth is going to still exist for eternity.
We'll get Leland on to talk about what's going to happen to the earth.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, seriously, I'm interested in these types of takes, but I do feel like we just always have to remember that although the world is chaotic around us, if we're faithful and if we're trying to do the right thing and we're getting our families prepared, we're going to be okay. And that can bring us a lot of peace of mind through the process of all this chaos that we're dealing with.
Not to turn this into a pitch, but this is something that we've thought about, because Bennett, a friend of ours on X, his extra dead JCB, I think he'll be coming on the show at some point, but he has had some posts about how like escaping into the woods and having a homestead isn't going to save you, kind of a thing. And we're actually going to talk about this today too. But Dwelt, I think, is the perfect solution because you don't have to. If you don't want to leave an abandoned society, you don't have to. You just have a backup in case you need to. And so you get the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you develop the skills in the meanwhile as you retreat to your Dwelt location on weekends or take a week off of work and go to Dwelt. Then you get to work in the garden and feed the baby goats and milk the mama goats and have that experience and develop those skills. I was recording some social videos for Dwelt last week. And one of the things that I highlighted is my family moved from the suburbs to our homestead. And we did it in faith. We were prompted to do it. And we've received a lot of answers as to why we were prompted to do that. And the kids went from a neighborhood with all their friends, like they'd hop on their bikes and ride around, or they'd go down to the basketball court and play basketball, or they'd go to their friend's house just down the street. Moving to the farm was exciting because it was a change. But once the honeymoon phase wears off, then it's like, okay, we have to adapt to this new reality. And I saw my kids are incredibly resilient. Humans are incredibly resilient. Going back to the commenter that said we're too doomsday, I think of, what he posts on X. He is a resilient individual, everything that he's gone through and everything that he stands for. So people are resilient. Anyway, so we moved to the farm, honeymoon gets over, and we got our kids into horseback riding lessons and horse 4-H. And so they started competing in horsemanship, and my wife took horseback riding classes. So they were immersed in this, and they developed a new set of skills around horses and livestock. And we have the cows, and so they had to develop new skills around that. We got chickens, and same thing there, and gardening and goats. And now I've got my 11-year-old daughter who gets up at 6 a.m. with my wife, and they go down to the goat barn and they milk goats, and they come back, and by 7:15, all the milk is in the fridge, and we're in there eating breakfast or making breakfast and moving on to the next thing. And we were working on a project the other day, and it was time to milk in the afternoon, and we're working on this project, and my wife is stressing out. She's like, oh, I gotta go milk, I gotta find my daughter. And so she's looking around, and we go out to the milk barn, and she's in there. She'd already started. She's milking the goats on her own. We open it up because we're like, Miriam, and she wasn't answering. So we go out to the milk barn, open it up. She's got a goat in the stand. She's milking away, and she just laughs like, oh, you caught me. I got started already. And I'm like, dude, this is transformative. And so rather than looking at it like a doomsday scenario, we should look at it as an aspirational thing. How amazing would it be to have my kids begin developing these skills and these attitudes? And I mean, what other 11-year-old can just go out and get a goat, put it in the stall and start milking it, like no help whatsoever? It's just amazing.
Seems
What do you
like
got,
a good chance to just get into this. This is something we were going to talk about, but this is right on topic. It was mostly you, but we both interacted with Kez now. I don't know if I'm saying that right. On X this week. Their original post says, a homestead in the woods won't save you. Bugging out is a ridiculous idea. The only way we're going to make it is by hunkering down, holding the line, and fixing our communities. There is no other way out of this. And I think this is I've seen, at least on the right side of politics, a split between people who are like, you need to go and get out, leave the cities, go get a homestead or go somewhere that's safe. And then another group that says, no, we shouldn't leave the cities. We should stay there and take them back and make them great again. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that from both of you.
Yeah, I can go on and on about this. First of all, I'll say that I can't make a recommendation for everyone. some people are going to be able to stay in the cities, stay in the suburbs, and make a difference and be leaders, and that's awesome. And I hold that in high regard. Other people are going to be prompted to get out of Dodge and prepare the way for others who want to get out of Dodge, and that was us. That was our experience. But being out here, and for 3 years while I was out here, I was commuting to Utah Valley, and we could talk about walk home bags and stuff like that and preparedness that way. That would be a fun topic to hit on, but I think we've already talked about it a little bit. But for us, I got to see the contrast between life in the suburbs, life in the city, and life on the homestead, and I'm grateful that we were prompted to be here. It's funny because I think Kesnal was talking specifically about Salt Lake City. I think that came up a couple of times in the thread or in the conversation going back and forth. Yeah, he mentioned Salt Lake City down at the bottom of your screen there. Salt Lake City is very different from many of the cities that are out there. I mean, you look at Portland and the homeless problem and the drug problem and the violence problem, or you look at south side of Chicago and the violence that's happening there. And there's obviously a grade or a scale of hope for cities. Some cities, I'm like, there's not a lot of hope there. Other cities, it's like, yeah, enough good people, you'll be able to turn it around. But when corruption is so ingrained and debauchery is so ingrained, and even law enforcement is not empowered to do anything about any of it, there are places where I'd be like, yeah, it's time to get out. And for me and my family, I look at, we could live in a city. We could live anywhere in the world. And I would have to teach my kids different skills. Like I'd have to teach them to divert their eyes, or to look away from something, or to avoid something, or to plug their ears because they don't want to hear something. I'd have to teach them about avoidance, not just what they see, but like where they go. Hey, you can't go there. I'd have to teach them about coming home at night and just being in the apartment. And so, that's one set of skills. And there are many good people in cities that need that set of skills. Or we can live in the countryside where they get to play and be outside and catch frogs and, play in the ponds and in the ditches and ride the 4-wheeler around the property. And I do want to talk sometime today about my experience on Sunday with my son. We went out and visited a bunch of neighbors. It was pretty cool. But we got home from that and I was like, man, the people that are around us, whether they're of our beliefs or not, are good people who are trying. And we've really developed a love for them. So yeah, man, some cities, I don't see a lot of hope. And what I look at is when a disruption occurs, power goes down, shipping goes down, violence breaks out via protests, those types of things, being in the city is not a good idea. Like, you have to get out of the city.
There's a reason. I was just going to say his name at the end of the podcast to be funny and check off the Dwelt podcast bingo card, but there's a reason Clay Martin tells people you need to get out of the city.
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts sort of related to this, because since we're talking about Salt Lake City specifically, I've had a lot of people ask, and I don't really know the answer. I should probably study it more. But there's the whole idea that God will clean his inner vessel first.
Yeah.
How do you interpret? Do you think Salt Lake City's target number one when stuff starts to go down?
Well, I think so. I've developed an opinion on a sequence of events that's going to happen, and in that sequence of events, I've lined it up with scriptures. A lot of people do YouTube videos and presentations and firesides. I won't do that. But I think it's very clear based on the scriptures that the time will come where Salt Lake City and the world is not safe for prophets. And we've seen that over and over again in the scriptures. I mean, in the Old Testament, you've got all sorts of places where the prophets have to leave for their own safety. In the Book of Mormon, I mean, the whole Book of Mormon is starts with Lehi having to leave Jerusalem for his own safety.
I mean, even Christ himself was killed by the world. So
yeah, exactly. And so I think it's been prophesied that the time will come where prophets will have to go into hiding, or they'll have to be quiet. There's this recurring thing in Isaiah where he talks about darkness covering the land. And there are different ways he talks about darkness. One is that there will be great darkness before the light breaks forth again, talking about the restoration of Christ's church in the last days. But then even after that, he talks about darkness in terms of prophets and apostles not being available. Generally, they're being hidden away. So I think the time comes where Salt Lake is so dangerous and things are so bad that prophets and apostles have to go underground or hide. And there's precedence for that. I mean, that happened when Utah became a state. The prophets had to hide. Wilford Woodruff had to go into hiding for weeks and weeks so that they wouldn't, take him out. And so I think the time comes. As far as, there is in Doctrine and Covenants, the Lord says it begins in my house, and from my house it will go forth. And so, there have been speculation that, some plague will happen or some financial collapse will happen, and it'll start in Salt Lake and then go forth from there. I think it's plausible. I mean, we have some things that the world hates. Yes, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on the religious side, but on the secular side, the NSA data center is right here in Utah. And if you're a foreign government that doesn't like what the USA is doing, if you can take out that data center, then or take it over, then all of a sudden you've got access to every phone call, every text message, everything that's posted online. It's all there. We also have a huge Facebook data center that's here. We also have in the West Desert, and this is hearsay. It's probably not right, but we have you can go out to the West Desert, northwest of Cedar Fort, and there are hundreds of miles of tubes in the ground storing something. Pipes in the ground storing something, and it's all fenced off, and there's signs that say do not enter, this is a federal facility. We've got the Dugway Proving Ground, we've got the Hill Air Force Base, which has all of the tankers that refuel. So if you're going to go bomb anywhere, you need a refueling tanker in air that can refuel you. Well, a ton of those go out of Hill Air Force Base. So we have a lot here that the world doesn't like.
Google is also building a center here, a data center.
Is it? Yeah.
Right next to the Facebook one.
There you go. So we've got a lot here that, we just keep getting targets painted on us. So I think it's plausible that bad things will happen in Salt Lake. And, if
that
you're in
brings
Salt
me
Lake,
great comfort because we're along the Wasatch. Is the fault line called the Wasatch Fault Line?
Oh yeah, we got the Wasatch Fault Line as well that runs right up the face of the mountains.
Since I was a kid, in elementary school, they would tell us we're like 100 years overdue for a huge earthquake, like an 8.0 earthquake. It still hasn't happened, but this brings me great comfort because I'm like, I don't know, 30, 40 miles away from Salt Lake City, and hopefully the epicenter will be up there then. And I'll just be on the outskirts of this earthquake.
Yeah, where you are, you will be on the outskirts probably. I mean, the fault line runs right along the base of the foothills of the Wasatch Mountains.
Yeah.
So you're probably
you can go for those in Utah. You can go to Timp Cave and see it, like while you're inside the cave. So
yeah, if you look at the hills above Pleasant Grove, Utah, you can see where the fault has slipped multiple times. Just look at the layers across the front of the G Mountain, if you know what that is. And it's right there.
Something that came to mind while you were talking is the Utah area president, I believe, was speaking in a sacrament meeting, and he was talking about Salt Lake City, and he said Salt Lake City, not that it's lost, but they've had to close down wards and stakes in Salt Lake because the membership just is dropping. While on the outside of Salt Lake, like down here in Utah County or north up in Bountiful in that area, it's going crazy. The church is just growing like crazy, and they speculate anybody who could move out of Salt Lake has moved. and that's why. And then you get all of the out of state people coming in. And so just an interesting point as we're talking about Salt Lake. And sorry, I got a message that my internet disconnected and it threw me off. So
dude, I got
hopefully you
that
can still
message
hear
too.
Me too.
Okay, here we go. Chinese attack underway. Internet's going down.
The other thing I
So-
thought of was you're talking about how it's going to be dangerous for prophets, and not even just our church, but you just had the stabbing in Australia.
Oh
of
yeah,
that
that's
priest.
right.
Yeah.
So it's already out there kind of dangerous for, I mean, in Europe, apparently it's happening all the time that these priests and different Christian sects are getting attacked by different people. So
Yeah,
interesting.
we are entering the season of the heretic. We're not quite there yet. It'll get worse, a lot worse. But anybody who stands up for belief in God, I think that's my opinion, is they will be targeted and be persecuted, be taken out. Not just Christians, but Muslims, anybody else, Jews that believe in God, they'll be targeted. So yeah, I would say if it's up to personal decision, by all means, if you're inspired to stay where you are in the cities or suburbs, then stay there. But if you have the opportunity to, I would say phase one, if you're supposed to be there, stay there, but look for a second location, whether it's a cabin in the woods or a farm or something like that you can go to. Look for that second location. Obviously, that's why we built Dwelt.
Or like a pre-made homesteading community.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we built Dwelt, right? So that people can have that opportunity to have a second location that is designed specifically for safety and skill development. I would say, that's phase one. Phase two is look for a place outside. Look for a place outside the city that's in the outskirts, at least in the suburbs or just beyond where the farms start. See if you can find something out there. A lot of times land is way expensive in those places because developers are buying them up and turning them into even more suburbs. So that's kind of hard to do. But I was amazed. Our property is a 70-mile drive from where my office was up in Utah Valley. And the beauty of it was I would get on a highway and drive on that highway until I got to the freeway, drive on the freeway until I got to Utah Valley, and hit traffic at, I don't know, maybe Pleasant Grove. And then my office was in Linden. So I didn't spend a lot of time in traffic. Instead, I had this like enjoyable country drive. Whereas people who are, I don't know how it is for, other people that we've worked with that are coming from Draper to Linden. It's like, 45 minutes from Draper to Linden. And if you live away from the freeway, it's another 10 minutes to get from your house to the freeway. And so you're an hour commute to go 15 miles, something like that. So that's how I would approach it. I think there is good to be done in cities, but not for long.
Yeah, I get the appeal. I understand why people are saying to stay in the city and save it. I hate to be the doomsday guy. I just don't know how possible it really is.
So this is a topic that came up. We traveled to Texas for the eclipse. And this is a topic that my wife brought up to her sister. She was like, okay, what's your emergency plan? And her sister was like, what do you mean emergency plan? And my wife was like, well, any type of emergency. Well, she's like, I've lived 40 plus years and there's never been an emergency. So why are you guys focused on that? And my wife was, like, you live in a place that has tornadoes, right? I mean, tornadoes are a real thing here. You've got to, and she's like, well, yeah, you go into the tornado shelter. But we actually, years and years ago, sat down with our kids and we did a family home evening on a Monday night. And we said, okay, let's map out our emergency plan. And we had our house and we had the kids' schools. Some of the kids were going to public school at the time. And we said, okay, let's say you're in the neighborhood and something happens to the house, or you're in the house and something happens to the house, like it starts on fire. What's your plan? What do you do? And for a teenager, they're like, well, I'll just go across the street or I'll go to my friend's house. But for a a 4-year-old, they're like, I don't know what I would do. And so we were like, okay, here's the neighbor across the road that you're going to go to. Okay, so what if we have a neighborhood issue where maybe the neighborhood gets roped off by the police and you can't get in? Or, maybe there's a flood. We lived at the bottom of a canyon. Maybe there's a flood that threatens the neighborhood and we got to go out. What do we do? Where do we meet? And so we identified a place just outside of our neighborhood up on the hill where we could meet. That was like any of us could walk there, even the 4-year-old, and get there no problem. And then we said, okay, what if there is a city emergency that's broader than just our neighborhood? Maybe it's 3 or 4 neighborhoods that are at risk. Where do we meet? And so we found this place where we could all meet. Everybody knew about it. And whenever we passed that place, we'd be like, hey, that's our meeting spot. And we had this emergency plan. We had our 72-hour kits ready to go. And I guess the other thing was, what do we do if we have to remain inside? What are the supplies we have? How do we manage things like waste? Because if the plumbing is ruined and you've got to deal with human waste, how do you do that? So we've got some supplies together for that. And I kid you not, so we lived in that house for 8 years. We had a forest fire that came and threatened, and not our neighborhood, but one of the other neighborhoods had to be evacuated. So that came very close. We had water issues where the water had to be turned off for our neighborhood. So we had to have plans for that. And then COVID happened where we had to be locked in. And so we had an emergency plan and we were fine. We had everything that we needed. We didn't have to rush and buy toilet paper because we already had toilet paper. And so I think you should have an emergency plan that should involve staying in. That should involve, what if we can't stay in? That should involve, what if we can't be in our neighborhood? And then what if we can't be in our city? And if you're a Dwelt member, you've got all of that pretty much handled because you have a place to go. But if you're not a Dwelt member, what are you going to do? And just having that out, discussing it, reviewing it a couple times a year will help bring a tremendous amount of safety in just about any scenario. So do you guys have emergency plans for your family?
Not really. It's something I talk about all the time. I'll tell my parents and stuff, like, we need a plan in case X happens, that we know what we're going to do.
Yeah. Okay. So
I would say we have, we haven't done what you just said, Mitch, which I think makes sense. Like, get the kids together and like discuss what to do. But we have talked about, different scenarios and what kinds of things you could do. But I want to be more specific. So I think that's a good reminder to do that with the family and be specific on letting them know where they could go if there is an emergency like that. And, I've talked that we do have emergency preparedness, like go bags and stuff. So we've kind of taken that step, but there's times when you're in an emergency, there's going to be some panic and anxiety, which can sometimes make you blank out, right? So then you're like, well, what do I do? Where do I go? But if you've rehearsed it, if you've practiced it a bit and your kids kind of know, I think you're going to do a lot better, right? Because at least one or two of you is going to remember the plan and can kind of start guiding you and reminding you.
Okay, so that's the challenge for this week. You guys get your plans together to sit down with your family, train your family, talk to them. And obviously with little kids, you have to be a little bit careful. But I don't think you have to be too careful. Little kids, if you say, hey, if there's a fire in the house, what do we do? Most little kids can handle that. So, but your kids, if you've got one that's extra anxious, don't be like, a platoon of soldiers breaks into our house. What do we do? But the other scenario that I would talk about, and I think we've talked about it on the show before, is getting home. So because my commute was so long, 70 miles over highways and 50 miles as the crow flies, I thought, okay, if anything happens, how do I get home? And the first answer is, well, I'll just drive home. But if roads are destroyed, or if roads are blocked, or if there's an EMP and there's no power, how do I get home? And so I put together a bag. You don't need much food if you're walking home, but you are going to get killed by the elements before anything. So I had, a coat, a beanie, some gloves. I had a tarp. I had a wool blanket, had a first aid kit with everything that I might need there. And I had water filters so that I could filter water and get home. And I had a plan. I was like, okay, the first thing that I'm going to do, and I carried cash in my wallet. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to procure a bicycle, because I had so many miles to cover that I needed, if I could go on the freeway, I'd imagine everybody would be trying to go home or get out. And so if I could get a bike and go on the bike, I could cover a lot more ground faster. So whether it's giving a kid, $100 out of my wallet to buy his crappy old bike, or to go pick up one somewhere, like I was ready to go. And in the winter I had boots and gear, and in the summertime I had lightweight clothing and a hat and stuff like that. So that's another thing to consider, which Chris, you talked about the bike idea. Do you guys have bikes for you and your family? I know you've got a bike. You probably got 3 bikes.
Yeah, I've got my triathlon bike, so I can go somewhere.
There you go. So it might be a good idea you can go to DI, or if you're not in Utah or don't have a Deseret Industries nearby, you can go find a bike at Salvation Army or one of those places that's used and cheap.
Yeah, it would probably be a good idea too, because something that happens in triathlon races all the time. I've never had it happen, but every person who's doing, like, every triathlete who's experienced will have on them a patch kit for their tires, because it is really common during a race, especially the longer races, that you end up with a flat. And so if you're planning on needing to bike a good distance, like if I'm going from here to the first Dwelt location and I have to go 80 miles or whatever it is, it's probably a good idea to have a patch kit, because they're pretty cheap. And that way, if you get a flat tire, you're not walking the rest of the way. You can just fix it up in a couple minutes and you're back on your way.
It's a good idea. A patch kit and a little pump, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
What about you, Dan? Do you guys have bikes for everybody?
Yeah, we do actually. But man, one of the challenges is maintaining all of them for 6 people.
Yeah, that's true.
So in fact, this very weekend, I'm going to be going out in the garage and getting them out, because all the kids keep saying, I want to ride my bike. And I'm like, well, all the tires are flat. So, I'm going to use it as a learning opportunity though, and teach them how to do it too, so they can go out and pump it up. But yeah, we've got the bikes sitting there, like we could use them if we needed to. And so that's the key though, right? It's just making sure that you continue to maintain. That's just another example of something to stay up on.
Yeah, and I think that applies to everything, right? Whatever's in your 72-hour kit, you want to check it every 6 months and make sure the clothes that you have in there still fit the kid that you have it for, and the snacks that are in there are not moldy or eaten by mice or whatever. We had mice get into our 72-hour kits when we first did them. And so, it's just a mess. Everything's everywhere. And there's mouse poop and it's so gross. So we ended up hanging ours on the wall in our garage. And I've got 9 kids, so that's a lot of packs. Yeah. And I would get packs off of classified ads. Facebook Marketplace didn't exist at the time, but I'd get them off of KSL, which is a classified thing here in Utah. I scrounged up 11 packs and we got them filled up and we hung them on the wall so that the mice couldn't get to them. But yeah, it is super important to keep those things maintained. Yeah. So what do you say to somebody who's like, I've never experienced a disaster in my 40 years of living. What are the odds that I would get involved in one? And, why should I care?
Let's pull this up and talk about it. All right. So FBI Director Wray yesterday held a press conference where he said that Chinese hackers are preparing to attack U.S. infrastructure A Chinese hacking group known as Volt Typhoon has gained access to numerous American companies in telecommunications, energy, water, and other critical sectors, along with 23 pipeline operators being targeted. And this was not like they're trying to do this. It was they have access.
They're already in.
And they're
Yeah.
basically
Wow.
just waiting for the order to shut it down. So this is just one example of many. I was telling these guys before we recorded, I'm getting a water softener today. So my water's off right now for, I don't know, 6 hours or so is what they're saying, which is obviously not a big deal, but that's just me for 6 hours. What if my whole city is off and it's a week or whatever? You know, it becomes a problem really fast. Even things like what are people going to do when they have to go to the bathroom? Like things that they may not have realized. Your toilet's not going to work if there's no water. So
It'll
I don't
work
know.
one time.
Yeah. And then what are you going to do? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems somebody in response to this FBI press conference asked, what are you going to do if the electricity goes down? Do you have a plan for your family if electricity goes down? So the government's telling us these things could happen. It doesn't even have to be a disaster like an earthquake or a tornado or something natural. It can be China decides they're going to take down our power grid, or they're going to shut down the pipelines and now we don't have oil, so nobody can fill up their cars anymore. Like, these are the kinds of things that could happen, and it's probably why you should have a plan if they do.
Yeah, and in my 48 years of living or so, I've never seen a notice like that come across. Like, hey, our potential enemy is inside all of our systems, and all they have to do is flip a switch, and everything. We go back to the Stone Age. Like, I've never seen that before. So
that's the kind of thing they would not tell people in the past because they don't want to cause panic. Like,
that's true.
And now it's just like nobody cares about anything. It's like,
we're so numb to it. Yeah, whatever. I'll just ignore it.
That's like the fourth worst thing that happened yesterday. So who cares?
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to some of our early discussions about the willing victim. If they tell you what they're going to do to you and you don't try to stop it or plan for it, then you are a willing victim. And so when it goes down, they can rejoice because their doctrine is the same as Amos 3:7, right? That the Lord will do nothing save he tells his prophets first. They have that same doctrine, but it's skewed where it's like, okay, we're going to tell you what we're going to do to you, and if you do nothing to prepare for that, we get bonus points or whatever because we were able to do something bad to you and you were okay with it. It's like they're
basically not held accountable in their ideology.
Yeah.
You can think of it as karma. Like, they're not going to get the bad karma because they told you what was going to come and you let it happen. So it's not on them.
Yeah. It's crazy. So get your emergency plans prepared. And part of that should be a Dwelt membership. Take a look at that. We've got new videos on Dwelt, dweltsafehavens.com. Sorry, I don't know why my brain blanked out on that. We got new content going up there in the next week with videos and downloadables and things like that that you'll be able to check out. So anybody that went to dweltsafehavens.com and filled out the inquiry form on there, you'll get an email that kind of introduces the concept. And in fact, it might be a good idea for us to review some of the FAQs that we're getting. I get quite a few FAQs about, what is this going to look like? How does this work? What does this involve? And so one of the things, let me give everybody a quick update. So we've been working on all aspects of Dwelt, everything from the plat map and the design to what the facilities look like, to how we're marketing it, to the contracts that we have in place, the membership contracts, financing, all of that kind of stuff. And we've been working feverishly on this. Our goal is to be able to, 11 days, in the next 11 days, begin actually accepting applications for Dwelt. So we're working on that right now. Our phase 1 is a property in central Utah. And it's not too far away from where I am here in St. Pete. It's far enough away from Utah Valley that you could walk to it if you had to, but most other people wouldn't walk to it if they didn't know it was there, didn't know what resources they were, or that were there. And so it's happening. We're pulling it all together. I have an FAQ that I'm working through, and let me just go through some of the questions that come in for the FAQ. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
For those who are listening, I have the plot map pulled up for the first location. You can find it on our social medias. It's at Dwelt Safe Havens on X, on Instagram. It's posted on both of those, so go take a look.
Yeah, and it's this is just an idea. It's just a concept. We don't have this approved with the county. We haven't nailed down all those specifics, but just to give you an idea, in fact, I'll walk through it real quick if that's all right. So we've built this to the first location. This is phase 1. 50 families will be able to be here. And so we've got 20 tiny homes, 20 RV sites. A lot of people that we've talked to are like, hey, I've got this great RV that I could live in for a while. Will you make a place for me there? And so we've got 20 RV sites. And then tent sites, the way that we're doing that, there are a lot of people within the LDS community who bought canvas tents, especially those that are really into preparedness. They buy canvas tents. They've got one. Maybe they've used it a handful of times. But I have a big canvas tent that I use a couple times a year at least. And having it, I've had it for, 12 years now. There are a lot of things that you don't think about when you first get a canvas tent that you have to think about. And so the tent sites will be designed with a deck that you can put your tent on, that you'll still be able to stake out and everything, but it will be raised up because water is a major issue when you're in a tent, water and snow. And so if you have it on a deck, you'll be able to be up and out of the snow and the water will drain around you. And then you'll have stairs that you can, put your boots on and stuff like that. A lot of the year, a few months out of the year, anywhere outside of the city is just mud. And so you got to be prepared for that. So we've got 20 tiny homes, 20 RV sites, 20 tent sites. Each of the tiny home locations will also have a storage shipping container on it. So you'll be able to store your stuff. And so you can show up, have all of your stuff already there, whether you're there for the weekend or whether you're there because of a collapse. So those will all be there. We will have livestock pens and coops. We're starting with chickens and goats because those are easy to manage livestock. We will probably upgrade to a couple of beef cows and maybe even some horses for transportation at Dwelt locations. We will have greenhouses and gardens. We'll have a pond. And there is enough room where we can pasture some of the animals, but we're also looking at things for recreation, like putting some pickleball courts in, because if you can imagine the stress of a collapse, it'll be nice to have something fun you can do. I personally have a weight set that I think we should set up at the Dwelt location. We should have a little outdoor gym so people can lift and be in shape.
As the sauna king, I am promising a gym and a sauna at every Dwelt location.
I love it. Perfect.
Sweet.
And then a clubhouse where everybody can gather together, or if you're a Dwelt member, you can schedule it and have your family down to the property, and then a barn for all the things that are required with a barn, and all of the equipment that we'll need, tractors and feeding buckets and all that kind of stuff will be on location. So that's our vision for the Dwelt location. Let's talk about some of the FAQs. I've talked about what amenities will be there, what livestock will be there, how many other families will be there. I've talked about how soon it will be ready. We're anticipating taking applications this month, and we are anticipating having the first tiny homes on the property in July. So the first Dwelt members will be able to enjoy their tiny home this summer and fall and into the winter, and you'll be able to come down and stay up to 14 nights a month on the property in your own little place and start developing some of those homesteading skills. We do have built into the membership agreement that you won't be able to occupy the property full time unless certain criteria are met. A couple of those examples are U.S. government fails, the dollar fails, the electrical grid goes down, other acts of God that make your home uninhabitable, those types of things. When any one of those triggers off, which is all of them are probably likely in the next few years, you'll be able to come reside at Dwelt full time. And then what does it cost? Some of those costs are listed on our website. We'll get more information to people who are serious about applying. They'll be able to see. Basically, it involves a small down payment and then a small monthly membership fee. And with that, you'll be able to have access and maintain access, and you can sell your membership and recover your down payment if you need to do that. If life circumstances change or whatever, you'll be able to do that. And then part of the membership process is identifying how many family members you have planning on using this. We don't anticipate being able to provide for, a baby boomer with 6 kids who also has 87 grandkids. Their single Dwelt membership won't be able to accommodate all those people. But yeah, that's answering some of the FAQs that we get all the time. And those will be published on our website here shortly. Cool.
Yeah, that's great. They are currently cutting my drywall, so I was muted in case it's too loud.
But
I love
can't
it.
hear it.
I love the map. I love the idea. It's
awesome.
Coming along great.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with a friend last night. My wife and I went and had dinner with some friends, and they are not from here. They moved down here recently. They sold their house and bought a property down here, a very expensive homestead, and they don't have a homesteading background. They are figuring it out. They're super capable. He's in construction. He knows how to build stuff. Their family's phenomenal. But they were just commenting about how difficult it is to build your own homestead and how expensive it is to build your own homestead. And when I first sent him, or I first told him about Dwelt a few weeks ago, he was like, dude, I don't imagine anybody would want this. Like, who would buy a Dwelt membership? I don't get it. And as we were at dinner last night, he's like, dude, I've been thinking about it for the past couple of weeks. Had you done Dwelt 2 years ago, I wouldn't have sold my house in Utah Valley. I wouldn't have spent over, 7 figures on this homestead down here. I would have just become a Dwelt member and started that way. And he's like, it's genius. Everybody should have a Dwelt membership. And so I think, it was pretty satisfying to hear that. But I think there will be a lot of people who see the value in this. And with only 50 spots available in our phase 1, I think they're going to go pretty quickly. So again, I'm sorry this is has anything to look like a Dwelt sales pitch, but just wanted to answer the questions that people had about
it's literally the Dwelt podcast, so we're allowed to make a sell pitch.
Yeah. Since we talked about bugging out or having get out of Dodge, plans, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, I posted this video. What would you do if you lived in Israel right now, or Iran, or Syria? And I got a few answers back on that, and it got retweeted by a couple of pretty influential accounts, including Chris Hardman's. And people were commenting about it. And it was, everybody said, because my video was, if I were there, I'd get out of the line of fire. And everybody was like, yeah, get out of Dodge, get out of Dodge, get out of Dodge. And I didn't really push back on everybody, but my first thought was, to where? Where are you going to go? If there is war declared on your city or your town, or if a hack is predicted that is going to impact your area, where are you going to go? What do you think most people would say about that? What are people's options if they don't have a homestead or they're not considering Dwelt? What do you think people would say?
The mountains. There's It's not the big Utah mountains, but there's some smaller Utah mountains right next to my house. It's like my backyard. And when I talk to people in this area, every single person is like, I'm going up in those hills. I'm like, everybody's gonna go up in those hills.
Yeah.
And you're gonna do what? Just stand there in the hills? Like, what are you gonna do up there? There's
Yeah.
nothing up there except
Yeah.
sagebrush. So
Yeah, there's no food up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. What do you think,
Yeah.
Dan? What would people say?
I mean, I think that's definitely the first thing that most people would say is the mountain areas surrounding. But like you said, I mean, there's not a lot there in certain areas, right? And I mean, you've got to have water. So what are you going to do? So not everyone has a cabin that they've inherited, or, you know, that has like some property somewhere they've inherited. And so you definitely need to consider that and think about, like, where would you really be able to go? And would there be any resources there available to you? And would everyone else be trying to get there as well? Like Chris was saying, I mean, if you've got everybody going to the same place, how's that going to work?
It's
chaos.
not. And I don't think people really think it through. I think
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, I think part of it's probably that they don't think the situation will last very long before help comes from somewhere, from the UN or whoever's going to bring the help.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, I'll just go up in the hills for 6 hours and then the UN helicopters will come and give me what I need and it will be fine. That's probably not going to happen. It's probably, I mean, help will probably come at some point, but you're not looking in a real like grid down situation or something catastrophic. It's going to be a while before help can get to you. And so I think that's part of it. And then the other part is they just don't think through the details. Like Dan was just saying, so you just got to the mountains. Now what? What are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have shelter. You don't have food. You don't have water. Even if you do have a place in the mountains, if it's close, like if you're like, I'm going to go up, if you're in Utah County and you're like, I'm going to go up Provo Canyon or American Fork Canyon, like, yeah, you and 30,000 other people. So what are you going to do to defend where you're going? Because people are coming, and that's great about the first Dwelt location and all of them is they're far enough away. People aren't going to wander to them. Like, you're not going to go wander through central Utah if you don't have a destination in mind, because you're going to die. There's not a lot in central Utah. You're just going to die wandering out there. And then for those at the Dwelt location, if people do manage to find you, you can see for 50 miles. Like,
you'll see them coming.
Yeah. You're going to be prepared. And you can see them coming and do whatever is necessary to either help them or make sure they don't hurt you. So
go out and meet them and assess the situation and decide whether, defensive positions need to be taken or not. One of the things that I hear constantly is, oh, my neighborhood, we're good. We're going to take care of each other. I hear that all the time. And I think that's great. And I think in most scenarios, the neighborhoods will band together and help each other. But if it is an invasion or war, it doesn't matter what your neighborhood does if bombs are falling from the sky, right? You've got to get out of the line of fire. And unfortunately, we have population centers right by these targets. I mean, think of the population center around Hill Air Force Base, or the population center around the NSA building, or around Facebook. Like, all of Saratoga Springs and Eagle Mountain and Lehigh and Traverse Mountain are right by those targets. So, I mean, that can be the community, like, oh, my ward's going to help me, or my community is going to help me, is not a great answer for some of the things. For other things, it is. I was surprised at when the forest fire came and they said, okay, everybody has to evacuate. Those who were outside of the evacuation zone opened up their homes and said, yes, we've got an extra bed, we've got an extra room, come stay with us. You can come stay in the basement, or we can put tents out back. Like, whatever it was, there was a lot of help offered. But the neighborhoods that were evacuated dissolved like that instantaneously because everybody had to depart. And so, the one neighbor who ended up in Provo and the one neighbor who ended up in Spanish Fork, they weren't supporting and helping each other. They had to rely on others. So again, that's one of the reasons why we just harp
The
on
other
this,
thing
having
is
a
you're in
second
like a
location.
small community where people like each other, and it's, well, whether they like each other or not, it's this more or less the same kind of people. Whereas like if you're in Salt Lake City and people are getting evacuated from a neighborhood, I don't know how willing other people are going to be like, yeah, stranger, come into my house and sleep here.
That's true.
Like from
Yeah.
these areas that aren't as safe, and you don't know who, you just don't know who,
You don't know your neighbor
or the kind of person that you're going to bring into your home.
That's true. When we lived in Oregon for a year when I was younger, and we went around. When we first moved in, we knocked to all of our neighbors' doors and introduced ourselves. Hey, we're new in the neighborhood. And every single one of our neighbors was like, what are you doing? This isn't something we do in Oregon. And a lot of them were bugged that we went and introduced ourselves to them. It was really, really weird. It was foreign for us, having lived in Utah, where a lot of your neighbors in most communities. You go to church with them, you go to weekly activities with them, with young men's, young women's, or primary or whatever. In the Church of Jesus Christ, we know our neighbors, but outside of a Utah ward, it's not very common. So relying on your community isn't always a great situation. We have some other current events to talk about. Chris, what's on your list to talk about of the current events that are going on?
Well, we talked about the Chinese hack. We've got Iran and Israel's fake war.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
One?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, well, it's pretty weird. We can get into it, but I mean, essentially, Israel, I guess you could say it all started on October 7th or 6th, whatever date that was.
Yeah.
When Israel gets attacked, which is weird in and of itself, that one of the best intelligence agencies in the world, Mossad, apparently didn't see this attack coming. I saw someone joke about the Iran thing, and they were like, it's a good thing Iran didn't use those flying buggy things, whatever they are.
Yeah, the paragliders.
Yeah, it's a good thing they didn't use the paragliders instead of missiles, because apparently Israel can't defend against the paragliders. So it's hard to believe that they didn't know that was coming.
Oh, there's tons of conspiracy theories and I guess conspiracy facts that multiple intelligence agencies knew that it was coming and they just didn't prepare for it. And so then it's like, okay, did this all happen on purpose? In fact, not only are there accusations that they knew about it, but there are accusations that somebody planned it, not the Palestinian state or not Hamas, that it was actually foreign governments, 3-letter agencies showing up and saying, hey guys, if we do it this way, they'll never see it coming. And so it was actually fomented by international parties.
And a lot of people will say, why would Israel allow their country to be attacked if they knew it was coming? This is like, no, I'm not going to go down another conspiracy rabbit hole, but you'll get the same question about stuff like 9/11, for example.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if you understand the situation over there, Israel, honestly, at least their leadership, would love to go to war with some of these other countries and just get rid of them. Because in their minds, they can win. And if they can win, then this whole problem that they've been dealing with for, modern Israel since the 40s, but historically for thousands of years, they can get rid of that.
Yeah.
But then you have the other side, Iran, who's thinking the same thing, where like, if we can go Israel into fighting us, we can get rid of them. And so these countries, I think, at least the leadership, want a fight. At least some of them. It seems that some of the other Middle Eastern countries definitely don't want anything to happen because their countries are doing well and they're making lots of money on their oil and trade, and they have no reason to want that to be disrupted.
Yeah.
So you have this weird situation where Israel's attacked in a very suspicious attack that probably could have been stopped. They, in their retaliation, bomb an Iranian consulate in Syria and Damascus
Syria. Yeah.
and kill some of the Iranian leaders. So, if within the last week, Iran strikes back with the most boring attack you'll ever see in military history.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to launch 300 drones that take 2.5 hours to get to you and tell you they're coming.
Yeah.
And so that's what they do. Pretty much every single drone, every missile gets shot down. I think a couple of the ballistic missiles got through and hit an air base in Israel, but 99% of the stuff was shot down. And then last night you have Israel. Well, we don't know what happened last night. The initial reports were that the United States intelligence agencies and the Pentagon came out and said Israel has attacked Iran. There were reports of explosions in 7 Iranian cities. And then the so-called attack ends and Iran releases a statement where they're like, yeah, nothing happened. There were no explosions.
Yeah.
And then this morning, Israel says, we didn't do an attack. So you have Israel and Iran saying there was no attack. You have the Pentagon saying that Israel did attack. And I don't think anybody really knows. I mean, basically nothing happened. I don't know. No one knows what happened.
Well, and you have, so there's one big component that, and that's a great walk through it, the context on that. It is very, very strange. There's this other component worldwide, and especially here domestically, where one part that you skipped over is Israel's retaliation for the October 7th attack was to destroy Palestine, right? I mean, they're just bombing the crap out of Gaza. And so then you have protesters worldwide who are protesting city after city. We see it in the news every day. There was this protest, there was that protest, to the point to where they organized, and was it April 14th, I think, was the day, or April 13th, where they organized and they said, we're going to shut down logistics worldwide.
Did we lose Mitch? Is he gone for you, Dan?
Yeah, it's frozen.
Yeah,
Okay.
there have been protests worldwide. I'll talk a little until Mitch is back. There's been protests worldwide against Israel, and it's kind of unique because historically, Israel is like the one untouchable subject. It's like Republicans, Democrats, everyone's in line that you don't hate on Israel, you don't attack Israel. It was like this sacred object you weren't allowed to criticize at all. And it seems that the world has really turned on them in the last few months. You're back, Mitch, so you can continue.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, so that was the point that I got to, even though I was disconnected, I could see or hear everything you said. Starlink. Anyway, so yeah, there was the coordinated protest where they shut down the Golden Gate Bridge. They shut down like logistics and shipping. They shut down freeways. They shut down the road into Chicago O'Hare Airport. So people were getting out of their Ubers and running with their bags. I mean, it was a disaster. It was a mess. And so if we zoom out and take this for more than just face value, it's like, okay, what is being orchestrated here? And there are a number of things that people have their eyes on that are just dumbfounding. Chris sent me a chart the other day that showed the stock market was down. So the chart was all red, like today's numbers, we're way down. Everything, everything's crashing. But then you zoom out to a year and we've got this just bubble of the stock market continuing to climb. And it's like, what is driving that? How is that even possible? You have new layers of debt. The congressional budget just got approved and we're up to $34 trillion in debt and climbing quickly. And so if you look at the economic picture of it all, there's also this pressure against ESG. So BlackRock just went through this huge scandal and earnings issue that was blamed on their focus on ESG, which is what environmental, social, and governance, where it's, progressive policies that they're getting beat up for. And so I'm always like, okay, what's really going on here? If Israel wanted to destroy Gaza, they could. There would be an international backlash, and I guess that's what we're figuring out right now. If Iran wanted to cause some real damage, they could. So why didn't they? If Israel wanted to retaliate for the attack, why haven't they? And then there's this thing that says Biden knew that Iran was going to attack and gave them criteria and said, okay, if you do an attack, you can't do these certain things. Which, Chris, you commented, you were like, that's one good thing Biden has done was limit the damage on human lives or whatever it was.
I mean, yeah, I defended him over that, even though, yeah, if Trump were president, none of this would probably have happened to begin with. We wouldn't be in this situation. But once you're in the situation, I think, I mean, Israel killed Iranian leadership. And so it's hard to tell Iran, you can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
Especially when Iran is not extremely friendly to us anyways. So, and Iran also has the backing of Russia and China. So this isn't like just some country that you can boss around, because they have huge forces behind them too. So mitigating the consequences, I think, by saying, do your attack, but don't really attack, which is what happened. And then we went around, then we turned right around and told Israel, you're not going to have our support on any retaliation. If you want to do it, it's on your own, and you shouldn't do anything that is serious.
Yeah.
Which is apparently what happened. And so we end up at the end of the day, at least at where we are in the conflict at this point, with nothing happening. It's just kind of like this weird acting. It's like a fake war they've got going on.
Yeah. I mean, and not to discount the lives that have been lost. Surely, families have been destroyed and people have lost their lives, and that's terrible. Plenty of atrocities have happened, but this is not the scale that you would think it was if everybody was serious. And so then I'm like, okay, what's actually going on here? And I talked about the stock market being at a high, the U.S. debt being at a high. Gold is through the roof right now because the dollar is underperforming. And if you look at economic plans in the past, as things were about to burst, just so happened that war broke out. And then you were able to fund more development, more production, more logistics. You were able to fund armies, and all of a sudden financial problems seem to go away for a while. And I wonder if that's actually what's going on here, where though globally everybody's going, oh man, we're in for a crash. We're in for a correction. Let's see if we can create a scenario where we can avoid that type of correction and continue to maintain control over people. Weird stuff, man. I like to think of myself as fairly intelligent, but as I look at what's going on, I'm like, yeah, something doesn't sit well with me. This is something.
It's also, when you bring in the economic factor, it gets weird too, because you have the BRICS countries now who would love for the dollar to collapse, because then they become the powerhouses in the world.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you have the United States and the dollar, who will do whatever it takes to keep the dollar as the world currency. Yeah. And as you said, that involves going to war, because war seems to fix the economic problems. I think the problem that they have now is they keep trying to get these wars started, and the people aren't buying it. Like, nobody wants it. They tried the Russian-Ukraine thing, and people were like, no, we're not fighting Russia. We're like, I mean, originally people were pretty on board with sending Ukraine stuff. I think that's even gone now. Nobody wants anything to do with that. They're trying this Israel and Iran thing, and people are saying the same thing. Like, I'm not going to send my kids to die for Israel. If Israel wants to fight Iran, they can fight Iran. It's not the United States problem.
Yeah.
And so they're having a hard time getting the support that I think they hoped they could get. And in the past, it was easier because they controlled the news. And so they can get on and say Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, and there's not really anybody who can like counter that, because there is the internet. I mean, it existed obviously, but it wasn't what it is now. And so now it's like they can't control the narrative very well. Nobody wants war. We're all sick of fighting. It's not working. And then that leads me to, what are they going to do to make it happen, because
Yeah.
it's going to take something serious. And when you get into Ezra's eagle and some of the theories that there's like an attack or a false flag, and that's what sets off the next part of Ezra's eagle, it's not really that far-fetched that they would do something like that in order to get support, because I think the only way they can get support from the population at this point is something bad has to, like really bad has to happen. And then they
So
blame
who's
it on
they?
Iran or blame it on Russia or blame it on China.
Yeah.
And then they go.
Who's they in all this? That just keeps coming to my head because I'm like, and I know this might be
It's the
a whole other
reptilians.
episode, but
There's like there's a like race of reptiles running. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I think I have ideas of who you're referring to, but I'm just kind of thinking like when you say they, like who's orchestrating this behind the
I don't know. I'd be
scenes?
curious what Mitch's answer is, but I'll try and give an answer, because in the church, I would just say it's the Gadianton robbers, and everyone would know what I'm talking about. In the world, it's harder because what do you call them without being seen crazy? Like, it's the Illuminati. Like, okay, well, you're an insane person, so I'm not listening to you. It's like there are families and power structures that are not at a national level that are running things globally, or at least trying to. And I think they're the one. Banks, United Nations, Council on Foreign Relations, these kinds of groups that are, I know Council on Foreign Relations is technically a United States thing, but these groups are influencing global politics and trying to pull the strings so that they can profit.
Yeah. So I could go on for hours and hours about this. So I'm trying to simplify, but Chris mentioned in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you can say, oh, they're the modern day Gadianton robbers, and everybody knows what that means, because there was a group in the Book of Mormon that called themselves, they followed a guy named Gadianton, and they formed a conspiracy, and they took over the government, and they did it repeatedly over and over. They took over the economy, they took over the government, and they subjected the people, and they were called the Gadianton robbers. And so we get that because we have context from the Book of Mormon that it is something that has existed for all time. And even as they get destroyed time and time again, you find one or two bad actors that unearth these dark secrets and implement them, and then end up becoming kings and rulers of nations. If you're not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you can look in the Bible to Lamech, who was the son of Cain. And so Cain obviously killed his brother to get gain, right? He wanted to get ahead, and so he killed his brother for status. But Lamech was different. He killed to get gain, and then he did it via conspiracy, and he swore all the people that were in on it to secrecy at the cost of death, where if they even revealed the secret, they would be killed. And so I think, if Gadiantons, modern day Gadiantons isn't a common term that we can use, I think we could call children of Lamech, or Lamech, I don't know how you pronounce it in Hebrew, children of Lamech or followers of Lamech. Those are the guys who are doing it. So I think it doesn't, it's not the Illuminati. It's not, the Jews. It's not the Rothschilds. It is independent of family or country or government or religious belief. It is a group of people who have said, I will make the covenant of Lamech in order to get ahead. And they do get ahead. And you hear about it in Hollywood, you hear about it in government, like all these conspiracy concepts all go back to that original covenant that Lamech made. And so when I say they, that's what I'm talking about. It's people who have that ideology, who follow that it's actually good to kill to get gain, and it's good to enforce secrecy about that. So their acts are acts of darkness. They're hidden from us. And I think they put out these things, oh, it's the Masons, oh, it's the Illuminati, to distract people from looking at who it really is. Because who it really is, I think, is embedded in academia, in politics, in commerce, in religion, in like everything that's out there. The big challenge for us is to not just be skeptics. Like, it's so easy to be like, oh, it all sucks. Like, burn it to the ground. I'm done. We need to say, I know this is happening. These powers have gotten control over us. We didn't stop them. My grandparents, my great grandparents didn't stop them. So they're there. What am I going to do at the micro level with my family, with my neighbors, to thwart their ideology? We can't really thwart their actions at a high level. So we're going to thwart their ideology by getting married, having families, visiting our neighbors, teaching our kids good values, teaching our kids skills that will allow them to survive basically anything that happens out there, helping them understand the movements that are happening in the world. And anyway, that's my little rant on that. That's what I think.
Do you think that there is like at least a handful of people that are actually in charge of the whole thing?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
imagine there are, and that we don't know their names. That's kind of
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it's very organized, that it is led by a priesthood, if you will, that it has leaders at the top of it. It has regular activities and regular ordinances, and all of the stuff that you would expect to see from an organization or a church. I think that's what's happening. So yeah, there are people who are leading it. They're praying to their deities, getting answers from their deities, and executing the plan accordingly, according to their doctrine.
And it's not, I would say it's not, people will, you mentioned it, people will say like, oh, it's the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers. And I would say it's probably people, it's their bosses. It's whoever's telling them what to do.
Yeah, I remember seeing a
The
comedian's
Orsini
bit.
family.
Yeah. Well, and it probably is more prevalent in families. You look at even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as faithful parents teach their kids, that doctrine is perpetuated among family. And that also happens on the other side of the spectrum. I heard I think it was Dave Chappelle used to do a bit. He's like, all you people think Oprah's rich? You think Oprah's rich because she can give a car away to everyone? You need to look at who's signing Oprah's checks. And, it's kind of one of those eye-opening experiences where it's like, oh, wait, there's a power structure behind every public persona that we see that's signing their checks and putting them in positions. So yeah, I don't think we can combat that at the macro level. The only way we do it is by having families, raising our kids, and serving and blessing our neighbors.
And it's not like some conspiracy that they're hidden and you don't know their names. It's by design, because then they're allowed to operate in the world. Like, if you're a British royalty, you can't just like go to Walmart or what. Don't go to Walmart anyways. But
Yeah.
but you can't. Like, these people could do anything because no one knows who they are. And so it allows them complete freedom while also having all the power.
Yeah. There's a apocryphal but awesome story of an LDS missionary who's in Australia with his companion. They're knocking doors, and they knock on this door, and the man opens, and they're like, hey, we have a message from Jesus Christ. Would you mind if we shared it with you? And he looks at him and he goes, I know who you are. And they're like, oh, really? Have you been to church? And he's like, no, I know who you are. And the story goes on to, this guy reveals that he's part of an organization, and he's just some dude like in a house in Australia. But he's like, yeah, we have an organization, and we have meetings, and we know who you are, and we're constantly trying to combat you. And if I can find a link to one of the accounts, it's online everywhere. I'll share it on X. But yeah, I think they are people that you wouldn't pick out because they're not driving around in, a Lamborghini. Maybe they are. Maybe they've gotten a Lamborghini, but I think they're people who can operate, even if they show up in a Honda Civic and go to Walmart, you wouldn't know who they are.
Yeah.
So Chris, you said something earlier about a current event. Well, you didn't mention the current event, but you talked about Arab countries getting a lot of money from oil and the prosperity that they have. And did you guys see the stuff about the flooding in Dubai this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some speculation connecting it to the Iran-Iraq stuff, or sorry, Iran-Israel stuff, that somebody was like, well, Dubai, the United Emirates helped take down the Iranian drones and missiles that were coming to Israel. And so this was like some kind of retaliation using like a weather weapon against them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a bunch of stuff about how UAE has had a regular cloud seeding program. I mean, even Joe Rogan made a comment on his show about it, where it's been very well published and documented that they fly airplanes up, they drop aluminum dust or metal dust that the water molecules can form on, and that creates rain, and they do it week after week.
That was my joke. I said, who in Dubai left the weather machine on?
Yeah. And now it's flooding and overdoing it. I think, we have had weird weather events. And Chris, I know you wanted to talk about the Antarctica anomaly that happened.
Well, we talked a little bit about it on our last The airport is basically a lake. It's just insane. You have fast forward a little.
I think we can hear the sound in there.
Yeah, mute that audio, Chris.
Oh, sorry.
So we
There
can
we go.
hear
In
you.
my headphones. You have like the big high rises in Dubai, just water pouring through the ceilings, and it was pretty crazy. The sky turned green. I don't know if you guys saw that one, but there's a weather cam where it's like showing the storm come in and the sky just goes completely green.
I've got
weird stuff.
I've got some former clients that are living in Dubai right now. They're building a business in Dubai. And I saw she posted on Instagram. She's like, you can't get an Uber anywhere. You can't get DoorDash. So they're living in this, palatial apartment in a skyrise, and they have nothing. Like the food in the fridge is all they have. They can't go out to go buy more food. They can't order food to come to them, even though they've got all the money in the world to do that. They're just stuck. And, again, it's like, what do you have on hand? I posted a video, or I recorded a video this morning that I'm going to post. And it's like, you need to have food, you need to have water and water filters, even some candles. You should have a solar charger with some batteries, like headlamps. But even then, on a weather event like this, they can't go out and charge their solar headlamp. They can't charge their phone from it because there's no sun. There's too much cloudiness. And so, yeah, pretty crazy.
So sort of related to weird weather stuff is this, I just pulled it up, but for people who are not watching, it's a weather radar over St. Louis. And there's this storm just to the south of St. Louis and coming up around the east of it. But part of the storm is like a complete circle around St. Louis. It does not look like a natural formation.
Yeah, there was
another one
picture.
Of these happened too.
Oh yeah, the other picture had circles all over, and it's not a radar anomaly. It's definitely an anomaly, though.
People are
Super
trying
weird
to say it's a radar anomaly. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I'm buying it. I think, is this the St. Louis one or is this a different one? Anyways, it was happening in a few places. And they've noticed these circles in the weather radar start popping up after the weird Antarctica thing that we talked about last time.
Do you think they're related?
I mean, I love a good conspiracy, so I want to say yes. I don't know. There's also been, for those who are still watching, like a series of earthquakes, all kind of on the West Coast down through Central America. We had the big volcano eruption in Indonesia. I think Japan had another earthquake. So there's been a lot of weird weather and just natural phenomenons happening basically since the eclipse, since that's when the Antarctica thing happened.
Yeah. Did the Antarctica thing happen the day of the eclipse or the day after
It was basically like right as the eclipse ended, that thing started.
that thing started? That's wild. Can we talk through some sequencing? I had a conversation with sequencing with some of my friends the other day. Through my personal scripture study, I've figured out kind of some sequencing that, I've got my own beliefs on how everything is going to play out. We talk primarily about world events, but a lot of what we talk about is really relevant to people here in Utah, and especially relevant to people here in the United States. One of the things that is prophesied over and over and over again is that there will be an invasion, like the invasion that happened to Israel and to Judah in the Old Testament, where the king of the world, the Assyrian, came in and just destroyed and carried off all of the people who were in the northern kingdom of Israel. So Ephraim, and as well as Syria, and took them back to Assyria, to the Assyrian capital of Nineveh, or elsewhere in Assyria. And that's how we ended up with the 10 lost tribes, right? Because they got absorbed from the northern kingdom and taken there. And so then you had Judah and Benjamin that remained in the southern kingdom. And even then, they destroyed the southern kingdom, and the Assyrian Sennacherib was only turned back when he got to Jerusalem and couldn't overtake Jerusalem, and that God defended Jerusalem, and so he went back packing away. And that's actually, there's archaeological evidence of this account. So we have the biblical account, but we also have archaeological account that basically says Sennacherib went, took over, but didn't take over Jerusalem and came back home. And it outlines all of his other spoils as well. And so that's prophesied that it will happen in the United States, or to the United States, in the last days. And that if you read the invasion account from Isaiah and Micah and others, it is an invasion that is so huge that you can't even count the number of invaders. And so as we look at the world today, is there any army that is so huge that it could overtake the United States? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, the natural answer is China.
Yeah.
I don't know that I buy it, but yeah.
Yeah.
They're probably the only ones with the numbers, at least, that could do it.
Yeah. And if you think about the logistics, like, how do you get that many people on boats or on planes to actually get to our shores without defense mechanisms in place?
And then you realize, like, once you hit the shores, you're going up against a population that like has such an insane amount of guns that like it's not going to just be this like bulldoze through the United States. It's going to be brutal. Like if you even try and do something like that.
Okay, so how is the prophecy going to be completed if that's the case? I mean, the scenario that you just laid out seems like the common sense scenario. Invading army from China, boats and planes, they get here. Even if the U.S. military is incapacitated, how do they make any progress?
They don't. I don't know.
Unless
they're like do like a preliminary nuclear thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So the only way that they could carry that out successfully is if they sent us back to the Stone Age first, right? So the military would have to be disassembled. The federal government probably that runs the military would have to be disassembled. And the infrastructure that allows people the capability of defending themselves would have to be disassembled. So if the media, let's say the internet goes down, power's still up, but the internet goes down. All of our communications are internet based. We used to have broadcast media that went, analog, but we switched to digital a couple of decades ago, right? In the 90s. And so if the internet goes down and there's no communication and you're sitting in your house in Atlanta, Georgia, you've got local problems that you have to deal with. You're not going to be focused on external influences. And it's really interesting to me that we have this warning from the FBI that says China already has access to all of our stuff. And so if you're China and you want to invade the US, you flip that switch, take down just the internet. You don't need to take down power, but taking down the internet will probably take down power, because how many of our power plants are connected via internet controls? And so internet goes down, let's say power stays up for whatever reason, you're still going to be in a much better position to invade. Why in the world would China want to invade the US?
No idea.
No idea,
I don't
right? They've
know.
got a
No,
ton of
there's
land
no-
over there. They've got all the resources they need. Why would they need to invade? Well, one
Yeah,
thing
I mean,
that
the
China,
only reason would be because they want our government gone, but in the scenario where they're invading, that's already happened. So what's even the
yeah,
point?
yeah, they've already taken
Yeah.
it out. There was a policy enacted in China a few decades ago called the one-child policy. And when you combine the social religious sentiments of the time, they would abort or kill babies that were born female, right? Because everybody wanted a male that could carry on their name. And the short-sightedness of that is now you have a generation. I don't know what the percentages are, but it's like, and so they are on a demographic cliff right now. The women in China, especially in the cities, are able to ask for dowries. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a documentary from, I don't know, 10 years ago where they went and laid out the demographic cliff that China is facing, and they have boards in the cities that are basically men's resumes. They're little cards with men's resumes, their photo, their education, their career, how much money they make. And women in the cities can go up and say, I'm interested in this one. Out of the hundreds and hundreds of men, they get to pick the best of the best. And so they're not having any more babies. There are no women. And so as they get closer to this demographic cliff, as the baby boomers end up dying off, you're going to have a Generation X, the millennials, and Generation Z, where there are no women. And so even if the government is collapsed, I think their motivation for invading the US will be wives. And what's interesting is, as you look at prophecy over and over and over again in eschatology, it talks about how there are very few men left because the men are taken out. So as this invading force comes, they leave the women and children and take out all the men. And you can imagine, as a frustrated man in China that has no prospects of getting married, the call comes from the government, hey, you can go to the US and you can have a wife or two wives, and you can have free land and a kingdom. All you have to do is go and take it. And that's exactly the scenario that happened in ancient Rome, where Rome had all of these riches and all of this infrastructure and all of this great stuff, and they were invaded. The Visigoths came and invaded and took over, killed the men, and kept the women. And Rome was destroyed, right? Rome fell in a day. And so I see that as a very plausible scenario, and I don't think it's very far away. You mentioned Ezra's eagle recently. I think we're going to have an election this year, but I'm not sure that we're going to have an inauguration next year. And you guys have heard me say this over and over again. If there is a president elected, but that president is unable to be inaugurated, there is no line of succession. It doesn't matter who the vice president is. Come January 16th of next year, if there's no vice president ready to take over, or there's no president that can be inaugurated, the vice president doesn't assume the presidential, role, because they're no longer vice president. Their time has ended. Their term has ended. And so if there's a succession crisis, this is actually where I think we are in Ezra's eagle. I think the feather has already fallen, and that the head of the eagle is running the show. The first head of the eagle is running the show. The cabinet. We just had this James O'Keefe report where somebody from inside the White House said the White House chief of staff, what's his name, Jeff Zeik or something like that, is number 2 to the president. He's the tail wagging the dog. And so I think the first eagle head is already operating. When there's no president to inaugurate, the second eagle head stands up, the legislature, and says, this is the line of succession. And the third eagle head, the judicial branch, comes in and says, no, we're suing because you don't have the power to determine succession without succession as outlined by the Constitution already in place. And so you'll have the second and third eagle heads who rule together until the judicial branch basically squashes the legislative branch, and we move to a time of a reign of judges. And those of you who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints understand what it means to have a reign of the judges. So in all of this process, that's when the government becomes very weak and becomes susceptible. And as China says, man, the US is getting weaker, things are getting really rough over there, and they've got all of these women, that's what I think it possibly could happen to trigger this invasion from the Assyrian. Now, there are other scenarios, and I'm probably wrong about all of this, but I think that's one plausible thing. And you think about the timeline on that, that can be measured in months, not just years. When the succession crisis happens, that's less than a year away, if it does. Of an invasion from China could be just a few years behind that as we sort through all of our stuff. I think that's very plausible. And that's one of the reasons why I have so much urgency about preparedness, because the world that we live in now is going to be very different 4 years from now, 5 years from now.
I am like all eyes on Ezra's Eagle personally. I have probably told you guys this, but I have a friend on X, Thad. Shout out to Thad.
What's up, Thad?
He's pretty like critical of like us prophecy guys, like the happening guys. Mm-hmm. He's definitely a nothing ever happens bro. And I told him just like 2 days ago, if Ezra's Eagle doesn't play out in the next like year, basically until inauguration, in the way I think it's going to, or a lot of people think it's going to, I may become a nothing ever happens bro. Like I may be willing to say we're far away, but I saw the chances, the odds. I don't know where this came from. It may have came from Prout's book. But it was like the mathematical.
Oh yeah, somebody did the math. Yeah,
of Ezra's Eagle lining up the way it has up to this point, and it's like a number you can't even say. It's like one to the like 700th power, like like some insane number. I'm obviously not a math guy, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but like the chances of it lining up the way it has are, for all intents and purposes, impossible. Like it can't happen. And yet it has. And so I would be very, very surprised if it doesn't unfold in the next year, leading up to inauguration. You and I are probably different. I don't know. I don't know that I have a set opinion on Ezra's Eagle, because I'm kind of, Leland will say this too, where I'm just like waiting to see what happens. I know I believe something will happen. I believe the prophecy will play out. I don't know the details on what the eagle heads are, or who they are. And I'm always like, I send stuff to you all the time. And I'm always looking for what it could be, but I don't know. I want to believe it's people, because I think it's more exciting that way than if it's just the branches of government. I want it to be more like a movie, I guess. But regardless of whether it's branches of government or people or whatever, the next part has to happen before inauguration. So to your point, the timeline is short right now. Like we're there. And then it's once the first, well, I mean, you believe the first eagle head is already in charge, but even if you don't, once the first eagle head is in charge, it's like you could go through the 3 eagle heads in a month. Like there's no timeline on that. We just know one is ruling, the other one takes that one out, the third one takes that one out, and that could happen really fast,
very quickly,
in a situation where there isn't really like a structure in place to prevent that kind of thing.
Yeah, and at this dinner last night with friends, my friend's wife, she was like, okay, well, I understand all about it, Ezra's Eagle. I've seen it backwards and forwards. I know the math on it. Like it's very plausible. What if it's wrong? And I'm like, well, that's fine if it's wrong. I've got 5 other places in the scriptures where the timeline lines up. I mean, with Isaiah chapter 7 and 8, it lines up with 3rd Nephi chapter 6 and 7, it lines up. Like over and over and over again, we can get to this very crucial point. I think if you go off of what Isaiah says, we're actually looking at a lack of presidential leadership in 2025. And then within 18 months from that, we have, 18 months to 2 years from that, we have an invasion that occurs. If you look at 3rd Nephi, very similarly, somebody posted on X the other day, where are we at in the scriptures? And I said, well, I think we're in 3rd Nephi chapter 6, verse 3. Like that specific. I think I can nail it that specific. I'm probably wrong about all of this, but everything lines up from the Gadianton siege in 3rd Nephi is perfectly aligned with COVID, the COVID lockdowns that we had. I mean, there's so much that lines it up. And so that means we would be right before this time of a reign of the judges and the chief judge being taken out, which is different from the presidents. And that comes up later on in the 30th year in the Book of Mormon, which is also in 3rd Nephi chapter 6. Like, even if Ezra's eagle isn't, I mean, it is apocryphal, right? It's in the Apocrypha, literally. But even if Ezra's eagle is not correct, there are other places in the scriptures that put the timeline very, very short. And then you couple that with the words of the prophets. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just going to say, as we've noted before, though, in the Bible dictionary, it specifically says 2nd Esdras is of importance to the saints.
Yeah, especially considering the signs of the times and prior to the second coming of the
I don't want to
Savior.
get like too into the weeds on Ezra's eagle, but I think we've talked about it before off of this podcast. I want to know, I'll read a little bit from the prophecy because it's not very long.
Yeah.
But I want to get your take on who the lion is that it talks about. So
Yeah.
I'll read it real quick.
Okay.
For context, in Ezra's eagle, I'm not going to do the whole prophecy. We are at the point where the first eagle head, which is the middle head, has taken over, and he has been killed by the head on the left. So we're down to two heads left, and the head on the left is ruling. And that's where we're going to pick up. It says, "And I beheld, and lo, the head upon the right side devoured it that was upon the left side." So now there's only one eagle head left. "Then I heard a voice which said unto me, Look before thee, and consider the thing that thou seest. And I beheld, and lo, as it were, a roaring lion chased out of the wood. And I saw that he sent out a man's voice unto the eagle, and said, Hear thou, I will talk with thee, and the highest shall say unto thee, Art not thou it that remainest of the 4 beasts, whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them? And the 4th came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression, and so long dwelt he upon the earth with deceit." This 4th beast is the actual eagle, right?
Yeah.
That he's talking about.
Yeah.
So he's talking about the eagle as a whole. "For the earth hast thou not judged with truth, for thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and hast cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm."
So
As
basically, this lion shows up and chews out the eagle, like yells at it and is like, "You suck. You've done all this bad stuff," right?
And he says a few verses later, "And therefore appear no more, thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body." And then the eagle is burned.
Yeah. Is it 2nd Esdras
11.
12 that says the eagle's burned, or 11?
Yeah. So it's this is at the very end of 11, and then 12 continues and says
the
at
eagle's
that
burned.
point the eagle's burned.
Yeah.
Not to distract, because I want to get your answer, but as I'm reading this, it says, "Destroy the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit," and I just can't help but think of all the things they're doing to attack farmers right now.
Yeah, that's true. As a farmer, I see it all the time. Okay, so who is the lion? There are a number of theories on this. One is that the lion is the lost 10 tribes that comes back, because there are multiple times in the scriptures where the seed of Jacob. So in Mormon chapter 5, it talks about the seed of Jacob shall go forth among you as a lion, basically ripping people to shreds, right? So the descendants of Israel or the 10 lost tribes that are not here. There's also argument that Christ is the lion, and that's like in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, right? I can't remember, Azeroth or whatever his name is the lion and represents Christ. But scripturally, there's a lot to align Christ. There's also scripture that says it's Michael, the archangel, who comes and drives out the Assyrian and protects the people. And there's another scripture that says the servant. So you've got either Jacob, the descendants of Jacob, the descendants of Israel, the Savior, Michael, or the servant, whoever the servant is. And there are a lot of people in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that say the servant is Joseph Smith, which I align with very much.
Okay, before we continue, so in your framework, are you looking at the last eagle head then as the Assyrian?
No,
because a lot of people think that they're separate people, right?
Yeah, and you have the situation where the lion comes forth and rebukes the eagle and says, "You've done all of these sins," and then the eagle is burned. And then you've got in Revelation 13 where there's two characters, right? There's the beast, and then there's the what's it called? The horn. It's not the horn. That's
Stout
Daniel.
horn.
Yeah, it's the stout horn of Daniel. It's the same character, but he heals the wounded beast, right? And if you read that, all of the beasts are mentioned, but the eagle. And so while it doesn't specifically say it's the eagle that's healed, the beast heals, or the little horn heals the beast. And so it's like it tries to bring back America again. And so
which is interesting because after the third eagle head is gone, there are like two more feathers that come back and try and rule.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think as we talk about the Assyrian, this came up in our dinner conversation. They're like, is the Assyrian the eagle head? Is the Assyrian the Antichrist? And here's what I can piece together from scripture. The Assyrian comes, invades, lays siege on the U.S., drives all the way, it says, to the neck of Judah, which if you listen to Morgan Philpott, Utah means Judah, literally. And so drives all the people to the Wasatch Mountains where believers gather and people gather for refuge, is driven back by one of those four things, either the lost tribes, Christ, Michael, or the servant, and is driven out of the country and then goes on to form or to lead his world government in the Eastern Hemisphere, probably Geneva, Switzerland. And so that Assyrian could actually be the beast that then tries to resurrect the eagle, but fails at it. And then decides to go, because he can't go against us here in the Western Hemisphere, he goes against believers in the Eastern Hemisphere. And that's when you have Gog and Magog gathering up against Jerusalem, and the Jews flee into the Mount of Olives because Christ comes down and opens up the way for them. And so I think it's probably, my belief, I think the three eagle heads are actually the branches of government, not individual people. And so I think you could have maybe a former president who comes and tries to resurrect the beast and becomes the little horn. And so for years reading Daniel 7, I came to the conclusion that the little horn was Barack Obama. And sorry, we're getting into some really wild stuff here. And that Barack Obama would be the little horn that tries to resurrect the beast, but ends up becoming subject to resurrect the eagle, the United States, but then flees and becomes subject to the Antichrist, essentially, from Revelation 13. So that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your questions, but that's kind of how I see it all playing out based on the scriptures.
So there's I think it's Hiram Andrus has some lectures about this, where he goes really into depth about how right before, so the Assyrian comes and oppresses the saints for 3.5 years.
3.5 years, yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's the lost tribes who return and free us.
Yeah.
So that would seem to indicate that's a separate event from this lion in Ezra's eagle, right?
Well, if the lost tribes are the lion that sends the Assyrian packing and is like, you know what, the U.S. government is no more, and the eagle is burned later on, The one thing about the eagle being burned is we often think of burning as destructive, but a lot of times in the scriptures, burning is represented as purification and purifying. So as the
That's
eagles,
true.
yeah, if the eagle is pure, if the eagle is burned as a purification, that actually means that all of the badness is taken out of the United States, which we anticipate, those of us that are of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we anticipate the New Jerusalem being built and here. And so if the eagle is burned and purified, that makes room for the kingdom of God on earth to reside here.
Interesting. Well, we'll find out in a couple months.
That's right. So one of the questions that was brought up was, who do we recommend? Do you have that question in front of you, Chris?
Yeah, let me read it. The question was, who's your favorite follow in regards to end times? Is it Leland, Morgan Philpott, Michael B. Rush? And then they said, well, let's do that one first, and then I'll get to the second part of their question.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I don't know. Why don't you answer it first? What are your thoughts?
Well, Morgan is Mitch's neighbor, so I don't want to cause any bad blood. I've listened to, I don't even know now, tens of hours of Morgan.
Okay.
I really like Morgan's stuff. He's great. I would probably still say Leland is my favorite because I don't know, I connect with the way he thinks, I think.
Yeah.
Partly because we talked about this before. I think that things are going to be way, way, way weird. And I feel like Morgan's approach is a little more logical. It's like, I don't know. It's not boring, but it's like, oh, well, it's kind of a letdown to me. It's like, oh, that wasn't, it's like, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. But it's so like rational, logical. I'm like, well, I don't know. It's just kind of boring to me. I want it to be cool.
Yeah.
I want something cool to happen. So I like Leland, and now I'm sure people are like, well, if you want something weird to happen, then you really should like Michael B. Rush. But
yeah,
I can't do the like alien, everything is just aliens. I like Michael B. Rush. I've read all of his books. Like, I watch every one of his videos. He's great, and I love his perspective and everything. But like every single thing is aliens. I'm like,
that's the super
know,
easy answer, right? That's kind of the cop out. Oh, the answer is
Yeah.
aliens. Yeah. Why is our
I don't
economy
know.
bad? It's the aliens.
Yeah. He really is that meme of the ancient aliens guy. Like,
yeah,
aliens.
yeah,
he is
aliens.
That meme.
Okay, so I have a little story to tell that will kind of illustrate my perspective. Years and years ago, Abraham Gileadi came out with this book called Isaiah Decoded. And a couple of my buddies were like, hey, let's do a book club, which guys would never say, right? So they're like, hey, let's all buy the book and then we'll get together for lunch in between our jobs at Silicon Slopes and we'll talk about it. And, this is going to give us all the answers that we've wanted about the last days and Isaiah and all this kind of stuff. And so they all bought the book. And I went to buy the book and I had this impression, don't buy the book. And so we got together for lunch a week later and they had all started reading it and they're talking about this and that and the other thing. And I was like, I didn't buy it. I got to buy it. I'll buy it. And so I went to buy it and got that same impression. Don't buy the book. And so I knew that lunch was coming up in a week and we were going to talk about the book. And so I was like, I'm going to start studying Isaiah and see if I can understand it. And I've always had a love for the scriptures. From the time I was probably 13 years old, had a great experience with my dad where he encouraged me to study the scriptures. And so I've always loved it. I'd read Isaiah dozens of times by that point, but I decided to just really go all in. And so I read it over and over and over again. And I looked at, archaeological examples, and I look at history and culture and all of that kind of stuff. And I went after it in a big way. And I showed up to lunch the next week and they had gotten to chapter 2 or whatever. And so they're talking about stuff. And even in a week's time, I understood way more than they understood about what they had been reading. And so over the next probably month or 2 months, I just went after it. And by the time they had finished the book, they're talking about concepts that they had clearly seen through the eyes of Abraham Gileadi, but it was one perspective. In the meanwhile, I had poured through the source material and gained an understanding and gained a perspective that they never could have gotten to. And on top of all of that, through the gift of the Holy Ghost and through the knowledge received by the Holy Ghost, I had greater understanding of concepts that they hadn't even reviewed. And so Leland, I'm glad you brought this up. Leland brought this up
here.
Yeah, and I retweeted
Let me also
it.
say, just before we continue,
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I just noticed this view has 6,666 views on this post. So
somebody go look at it quickly.
I was just going to say, every one of these guys we just mentioned, Leland, which we're going to go over this post, Morgan and Michael B. Rush are very adamant that you should do your own study. So this is not a critique of them at all.
Yeah, for sure. So Leland says, many procrastinate their study of the gospel to the extent that when they awaken to our awful state, they go through a phase of frantically bulk outsourcing their understanding to others, trying to catch up instead of studying in the line-by-line manner that they ignored. And then he goes on to tweet a couple of other things. But I retweeted this because I've experienced that. So for the decades that I've been enthusiastically studying this stuff and being taught, I've read, just like Chris said, I've read all of Michael B. Rush's stuff. I've seen Morgan's videos. I've read James Prout's books. I mean, if there is somebody out there talking about this stuff, I listen to them. But I'm in a position now where I don't listen to them because they have something new that I haven't heard or considered. It's more of, I listen to them and go, okay, how do I disagree with them based on my personal understanding? And that's pretty satisfying for me, because then it allows me to check my stuff to make sure that I've gotten to the place that I needed to get to. But it also helps me understand all of these people, many of them who are friends of mine who are searching for answers. I get to see the source material that they're going to, and then I get to answer questions. So at this dinner last night, we spent hours together and I was answering questions, and she's like, hey, what about what Michael B. Rush says about this? And I'd say, well, here's my perspective on that, and here's some scriptures to back it up. Well, what about what, Morgan Philpott says about this? Well, here's what I think of that. Here's where he's right. Here's where I disagree. And here's why I disagree. And so I would say, sure, watch those videos, but don't believe any of it until you understand the scriptures. And I would say even go to the scriptures first, in the words of modern prophets and apostles first, and start to map out your own timeline, your own sequence of events, your own concepts of who these people are. And, submit questions to us. We're happy to try to address them and lay it out, but go to the source material, because your understanding will be way, way better than if you're just listening to this person or that person. The other caution I would give you is there are a lot of Facebook groups and Discord servers where you can get on and have conversations with people who are reading these books and listening to these YouTube videos, and they will interject stuff that is totally wrong, just completely wrong because of something they read 5 years ago from somebody that they built their whole belief system off of. And you can be fooled by people who have no idea what they're talking about because they got it from somebody else. So you have to really be careful of that.
I'll add that I was definitely one of these people. Like, my entire understanding of the last days, and probably not the entire, but 90% of it for years was just Leland stuff. Like, I didn't read any of it myself. I'm like, well, Leland's read it, so I'll just listen to what he says. and I think that's tempting, because why we do that with every other area of our life. Like, I'm just going to go to the person who knows what they're doing and learn from them. But it wasn't until like this last year when I started having conversations with you where I felt like we would talk about things and I was like, oh man, I don't know how to back up what I'm saying, because I don't know like where to go. I can repeat the talking points that I've heard other people say, but I can't like do it myself. And so that's when I started. I'm still not great at it, but That's when I started doing more of my own study, and it really does make a difference. Once you talk to someone like Mitch who knows what they're doing, like it becomes pretty clear that you don't know anything unless you've been studying it on your own.
Well, we had a conversation last night. I appreciate the kudos on that. We had a conversation last night where our friend was asking, okay, well, how do I understand what's going to happen with members of the church and the people of the world and the Gadiantons, and where do I look? And I was like, okay, first place you need to go to is First Nephi chapter 14. President Nelson referred to it a couple of conferences ago. You've got to internalize that. You've got to read it. And then you've got to go over to First Nephi chapter 21. I'm terrible with numbers. And so the numbers got messed up in my head. I was like, Second Nephi 21. And I was like, wait, that's not what Second Nephi 21. Oh yeah. First Nephi 21. You got to read there about the gathering of Israel. You've got the servant who's like, I tried to gather, but I couldn't. And the Lord's like, okay, it's my turn to gather. And anyway, so I'm like, this is where you go to get this stuff. I wasn't like, oh, you got to look up Morgan's video from 3 months ago where he was in North Carolina or whatever. And fortunately I hadn't do that. No dig on Morgan. He's brilliant, right? I love the guy. He's phenomenal. And I've learned a lot from my conversations with him and from listening to his stuff. But at the same time, it's like, I would never base everything that I know about this on what Morgan says. So yeah, getting to the point where you're like, oh, I love First Nephi chapter 14. And, right at the beginning, it talks about how in the last days, if the Gentiles don't reject Christ, that they will be counted as the sons of Lehi, which is a whole concept that, man, we should explore. What is a son of Lehi? How does that mean? Or what does that mean? And how do we become a son of Lehi? And then it goes on, like just going through and knowing the scriptures and having a love for them is the best way to do it. That's what I would say.
Like these guys should be supplemental to your study, not your study.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the same thing goes to any Come Follow Me podcast that's out there or, anything like that.
Yeah. You can't listen to the Come Follow Me podcast and expect it to replace your personal study of the scriptures.
Yeah. Okay. So there was another question related to that, or am I thinking?
Yep. Same one, same guy. It was also, what are your thoughts on books like Visions of Glory or The Message? It seems to me that people either take it to be scripture or you're an apostate for reading it. I have not read them, but I definitely have had that vibe from people who tell me to read them or tell me not to read them. It's like, you got to read this. It's going to change your life. Or like, if you open that book, you're going to be excommunicated or something. Like, it seems very polarizing.
Yeah, so it is. And I'll tell you a personal experience that I had when Visions of Glory came out. I had a family member who was like, dude, you got to read this book. And so I read it. And the whole time I'm mindful, right? Because I don't want to be deceived. And this was before anybody ever said that Visions of Glory would cause deception. And so it was brand new. I read it. And I was like, okay, is this, how well does this gel with scripture? And is it true? Who was this written for? Why was it written? And I boiled it down to the answer that I got was my takeaways from this book should be prepare yourself and your family spiritually and prepare yourself and your family temporally. That's what I got out of it. And that kind of gave me the answer that, okay, maybe not everything in here is true. And maybe not everything in here is for me. And it later came out, the son of John Pontius, who wrote it after Thomas, I can't remember his last name, the guy that, do you remember you haven't read it. The main character in the book, I think they call him Spencer, but his name in real life is Thomas. So anyway, it came out that the author submitted it to the publisher, and the publisher made a bunch of edits before publishing that the author disagreed with, but the publisher published it anyway. So there are a bunch of false things in there that kind of help with story continuity and stuff like that. And so then I started seeing friends that were reading it, and they were focusing on other things that weren't get prepared spiritually and get prepared temporally. And follow the prophet. I think that was the other thing that came out of it. And so they were focusing on other things. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. There's potential for damage from this. And then I read all the books that were out there. I've read them all, and continue to read many of them. Many of them I'm just like, no, I'm not going to read this book. But I think there is great danger in those books, like tremendous danger, because you think about Satan's approach to things. He gives you an easy way. He's like, hey, I'm going to give you an inside scoop, and it's going to be easier than actually having the experience yourself. I'm going to save all of humanity. I'm going to skip their need for having experience and suffering pain. I'm just going to get them there. So it's this great lie that he has. And so a lot of people use them as a shortcut, and they get tricked. And so even if the author is wrong, if the publisher is wrong, they start following it. And you see a lot of people, number one, start to turn against the authority and the leaders of the church. That's normally the first thing that happens, is they go, oh, well, the leaders of the church don't know, or the leaders of the church know, but they won't talk about it. And then that spirals into apostasy every flipping time. And it's not just apostasy, but it also ends up in adultery and just debauchery. Families are destroyed, and then you play apostate bingo, right? You're doing all these destructive things in your life. And I have a quote here. This is from President M. Russell Ballard. Let me look it up. It's in the April conference of 2017. So let me see if I can get to Gospel Library, and I'll share the link, or you can just look it up. Look up Elder Ballard's talk from April of 2017. It's called The Trek Continues. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Oh, maybe it's October. Let's see.
It's October 2017, it looks like.
I was just off. Okay, let's see. October 27th. Trek Continues. Okay, so it's a great talk. It talks right off the bat about Jane Manning James. But if you scroll down, I'm looking at scroll down past the pictures. There's a bullet list about 3/4 of the way down, maybe. Yeah, right there. Today I repeat earlier counsel from church leaders. Brothers and sisters, keep the doctrine of Christ pure and never be deceived by those who tamper with the doctrine. The gospel of the Father and the Son was restored through Joseph Smith, the prophet for this last dispensation. Do not listen to those who have not been ordained and or set apart to their church calling and are not acknowledged by common consent of the members of the church. Be aware of organizations, groups, or individuals claiming secret answers to doctrinal questions that they say today's apostles and prophets do not have or understand. And then there's additional counsel. Don't listen to get rich quick schemes. Don't do energy healing. Like, he doesn't say energy healing, but he says, healing outside of the priesthood and medical stuff. And I remember when he was teaching this, it really stood out to me. I was watching General Conference, and I felt like he was talking to me, because I had read all of the books, and I had this experience where, I'd been prompted not to study certain books, and I'd seen, I don't know if I should admit this publicly, but because of my love for the scriptures, I've been invited to many, many groups and many, many group meetings. And I was invited to a private forum that Julie Rowe had set up. And people were asking me questions, and I made a comment that kind of that got me censored on the group, where basically I was defending the prophet, number one, but number two, I was like, well, it sounds like Julie is talking about this, and it ended up being something that she had alluded to but was terrified to talk about. And so when I called her out on it, I'm like, she's preaching this doctrine. They were like, hey, you can't talk about that on here. And so I was like, okay, I left the group. I was like, this is bull crap. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And I've actually hesitated. I don't do firesides. I have hesitated to do a podcast until now, because that's been my biggest concern, is I'm not called to teach anybody. And so when you hear me talk about this stuff, it's because I have a passion about it, and I'm encouraging you to study this stuff. And I'm just sharing my opinions, and I'm mostly wrong about all of it. So,
and I'll just add
anyway,
that the reason, first of all, I don't think any of us are going to tell you It's not that I don't think. I know none of us are going to tell you to do something doctrinally different than what the church is saying. Like
Yeah.
none of us are questioning the doctrine at all.
Yeah.
Not even a
I
little
don't
bit.
even question the culture of the church or the
Yeah, me
policies of
neither.
the church.
I'm
People
fine
are
with
always
it.
like,
Yeah.
well, what is
Yeah.
doctrine and what is policy? I'm like, it's Christ's
I'm like,
church.
whatever they
Like,
tell us to do, you should
he
just do it.
dictates it. Yeah.
But yeah, let's just be on record right now. Whatever the prophet tells you to do, that's what you should do.
Yes.
It's that simple, really.
Yeah.
I think that we talk about we speculate on a lot of second coming and last day stuff.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Would you consider that doctrine?
Well, I'm just trying to understand it. And I have opinions, and I always say this is my opinion or this is the way that I understand it. But
Definitely don't want it to come across as doctrine.
Yeah, well, a lot of teachers will be like, this is how it is. So, I mean, not to single out Abraham Gileadi, but he does that. This is how it is. And I'm like, no, I'm not okay with that. I'm okay with, I think it might be this. I don't know. You tell me what you think and I'll learn from you.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say, like, the reason we do that is so that you understand why we're doing this whole project anyways. Like, we really believe we're at the end times. And so it provides context, I think, for why we're getting prepared and why we're into these things anyways.
Yeah. And it's not just we believe, we agree with, like, we sustain the words of the prophets. And if you look at the frequency at which they talk about the second coming of Christ being soon, that frequency is increasing significantly. So we believe the prophets literally, that when they say, what did President Holland say about
this is an urgent matter for all of us?
The urgency. Yeah. It's an urgent matter.
But to be clear, if President Nelson came out and said the second coming's more than 1,000 years away, then that's cool with me. Then it's more than 1,000 years away. That's what it is.
Yeah. But it certainly is an urgent matter. And so we're following what we think the scriptures say and the leaders, the prophets and apostles say. It's an urgent work. Time is running out. And so we need to be prepared to help others. And, going back, let's take this full circle to the question about doomsday. You guys are really all about doomsday. I would flip that on its head and say, we're actually all about salvation day, the time at which Babylon is destroyed and we get to raise our families in righteousness. And part of surviving that process is making sure you have a safe place to go. You know how to create and grow food. You know how to take or develop skills and make them portable. Why? So you can serve your family and so you can serve others. There is a time when literally millions of people will come to this area or come to places of refuge. And we need to be in a position to feed them, to clothe them, to protect them. And that's what this is all really about. It's about the day of salvation, not the day of doom.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, well, on that note, a good place to stop.
Let's wrap it up.
You guys have more, we can. Okay.
Just a quick reminder. So you guys are going to work on emergency plans with your family this week, and we'll bring that up on the next podcast and see how those have formulated, how those are doing.
Sounds great.
Yeah, cool. Good.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks everyone for listening.